button. And we are on. So let's get the party started. Woo! Hello, planet Earth, and welcome. I'm Lilia. My pronouns are she and hers, and thank you for joining us today for the 14th episode of DM Maynard's Reflective Conversation series on gender affirming topics for parents, partners, educators, health providers, and more. Part of our platform which aims to visibilize all gender affirming topics. So before we get started today, I just want to make a special note in light of Ida Hobbit yesterday, which was the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia. I'd like to point out that although today's episode features allies of the community, as the series usually does feature, we also feature voices from the trans community. And we believe that it's urgent to lift the trans voices and allow them to lead the conversations whenever it is possible. And so today, for those who benefit, I'd like to add in a little special bit here. And for those who will benefit from an audio description, please allow me to explain that I'm a 40-something brunette in an office space and on screen with two other women. So first, our real host and creator of this series, author and educator, Dia Maynard. Welcome, Dee.
Thank you, Lil. Hi, I'm missing you. I'm not in Spain with you any longer.
Yes, last time you were here with me, it was lovely.
Yes, I'm going to describe my setting also, if you're comfortable with that for a moment. So I'm in one room, and my background is a multicolored orange, yellow, green, blue, and red background with some black and white in it that says, it focuses all the aspects of New York City, which is what I am shooting from today. Different setting than usual, with a brown bookcase that has the same color books on it. I have white hair, and I'm wearing blue. My skin color is white, and I'm wearing different shades of blue with a scarf and a dress that looks like a shirt.
Thank you, Dee. Yes, so Dee's in New York and I'm in Spain. And on the other hand here, our special guest today is Katie Leikam, MBA, LCSW, a licensed clinical social worker who has penned the book titled The Gender Identity Journal, about which I'm excited to learn more about today. Katie, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Did you want to do the special introduction?
Sure. So I am a early 40s woman, cisgender woman. I have on a green, like a hunter green dress, blonde hair. I have a blurry background. My skin color is white, and I have blue eyes.
Thank you so much, Katie. So without further ado, I'm going to leave it to you, Dee, to lead the interview with Katie so we can learn more about this book.
Okay. Well, Katie, I think it's important for us to tell people how we met. So I was presenting at a conference for PCGS, the Psychotherapy Center for Gender and Sexuality. And when I was there, you attended one of my workshops, and we spoke afterward, and we've stayed in touch ever since. And then when you wrote your book, you contacted me again, and I really think it's a wonderful book. I read every single page on it. I did many of the exercises, and I really found it very informative and very aligned with my books, in fact. And I thought, what a great way to have people be introduced to your book than by interviewing you here. I was able to attend some book release parties for you online, and I'm so proud of you, and I'm so honored to have you here today. So I was wondering, would you just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself so they can learn more about you?
Sure, yeah. So I have been a social worker since, oh goodness, since like 2004, when I started my Master's of Social Work degree at the University of Georgia. And I stayed in Athens, Georgia for about 10 years. I love the city. And then I moved to the Atlanta area. And I've worked in many different fields. I've been a hospice social worker. I've worked with foster kids. I've I've worked with foster kids. I've worked with people with severe and persistent mental illnesses on an ACT team. And then I opened a private practice as soon as I got fully licensed, about over 5 years ago now, working exclusively with the LGBTQ and transgender community. And throughout that process, I got licensed in multiple states. I'm licensed to see clients in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, and Texas.
Wow. Could I ask a question here, Dee?
Yes.
It's about being a therapist in some of the states in the US where there's anti-trans legislation happening now. So I was wondering, Katie, have things changed for you being a therapist in these areas? Have you noticed any feedback that seems to be, a tendency at all?
Yeah, things have definitely changed. Things have changed with the way my sessions go, and things have changed with therapists themselves. In Texas, for instance, the governor very recently wanted therapists to report families to the Department of Family and Children's Services if they found out that they had transgender children. So this kind of frightened therapists in the state, and a lot of people took a stance, of course, that they would never report families, even through threat of having their license taken away. And then how it's changed with my own clients are we spend a lot more time in session talking about fear and how do I move out of the state and what happens if this legislation passes.
Thank you for your answer to that. It's really interesting to know the therapist perspective of how this is affecting your own practices and your clients.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the parents talk to me about this all the time, about maybe needing to, I'm not a therapist, but when I do support groups, talking about needing to move, or partners if they're having surgery or something, how they're going to handle all of that. So I'm glad that you brought it up at the top of the interview, Lil. I know we had discussed that we made this talk about this, and I'm glad that we did it at the top, because I think it's important that we address it like you did the other parts of the things you talked about earlier with us. And so with that in mind, I mean, one of the things that we talked about, Katie, was that not only do you hold the degree in this area, you hold some other degrees and some other areas of expertise. Would you like to talk about that for a moment so we get to have the full scope of your background?
Yeah, so I went back to school. Well, I have an associate's degree in psychology and a bachelor's degree in psychology with a minor in criminal justice. For a while, I thought I wanted to be a juvenile probation officer for some reason. And then I went back to school about 3 years ago to start an MBA program. And I finished my MBA in 2020. So I have an MBA in marketing as well.
Yeah. And if Katie, I notice if you apologize, it's because there's your adorable cat walking across in the same room with this real live Zoom. So I just want those listeners who did not see that her cat just is walking through sometimes. So I just wanted to point that out. What led you to writing the Gender Identity Journal, props and practices for exploration and self-discovery book? I know it's a long title, but many of these books are, but if you want to explain what led you to do this.
Well, I've always wanted to write a book. I started writing poetry when I was like 13 years old, and I've hosted spoken word nights for a couple of years, and I've been a storyteller on stage. So I just love writing in general. I've always wanted to write a book, and I was approached by a publisher, and they asked me if I would be interested in writing the book. And I was like, yes, I've always wanted to write a book. Of course I would. And, you know, gender identity and working with clients and helping people discover their gender identity is my specialty and expertise. So I was very excited to write this book.
Well, I mean, as reading it over and everything, I think it's great at the very beginning, you do define gender identity and gender and sexuality. Why don't you touch on a little bit of that so our listeners we're all on the same page based on, your book.
Yeah, so I'm gonna take a little snippet here. Gender identity is the gender that you personally know yourself to be and how you choose to express it.
Why don't you hold up your book so we can see the front cover? Right.
Sure. It's I don't know if you can see it with the
there it is. Now there we are. Okay, great. Yeah. Okay.
So gender is based on societal expectations around various behaviors and characteristics, including legal and social statuses. So gender identity and gender is just a little bit different. Gender identity is more personal to you, and gender is more broad as to what society believes gender is.
Mm-hmm. So and what? Yeah, I was going to say, would you? Yeah, go ahead.
And then it's important to note that your sexual orientation is different than your gender. Your assigned gender doesn't dictate what your sexuality is. And, someone can be transgender and be, attracted to someone of the same gender of different gender identities.
So what was your intention when you were writing the book? Once you started getting into it, what's your intended goal or outcome, for this book when you were doing it? What did you have in mind?
I wanted the readers to be able to finish my book and have a more clear understanding of what their gender identity is. And that doesn't mean that this book is just for people who were going to go down the path of, being someone of transgender experience. This book is for anyone to explore your gender. I've had parents of kids who are trans read and explore, fill out this book to gain a clearer understanding of their child. And I've had clients of mine who are just wanting to do some extra work outside of session. So really just anyone, this book is for anyone who is willing to open their mind and explore their gender identity.
Yeah, I'm really glad that, sorry, Dee. Sure. I just wanted to interject. I'm really glad that you mentioned that. Because when I saw the sort of the subtitle to the main title, Prompts and Practices for Exploration and Self-Discovery, I thought that actually sounds like something I would like to do. Although, I think it's clear I'll out myself and say I'm a cis-leaning and feminine identifying person, but I'm very curious about what gender identity is. And I thought this is a great way could be a great way for allies as well. We're not just talking about trans people, but in general, educating and allowing allies to have a space where they can safely and securely explore and learn and expand on their idea of gender identity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think, when I was reading it, the things that stood out to me was the portions about gender expression and gender roles and things in society that I think that it's really good to think about and to understand, especially Lil, and for you and I who really work in this space to really do some exploration there too. I mean, when I wrote my books, of course I looked into this a lot, but I think that your book gives clear exercises and prompts, and there's quotes and lots of different questions to actually sit with your own thoughts. And one of the things that I thought was excellent was how many times you would say, it's okay to put this book down, take your time, pace yourself. I found that I did the same thing. And when I read it, it's like, wow, I can see how Katie and I are very aligned in our work, in that it's very important that I think people can become very overwhelmed, all of us, doing this work, and that to remind sometimes being an A personality and wanting to get everything done right away and do it from beginning to end, go from the beginning to the end, that sometimes I feel that it's important to take pauses, take breaks, because it's very emotional and sometimes very hard work. Can you have your thoughts about this?
Yeah, I have lots of thoughts. So the book is structured where the first few chapters are directly exploring your gender identity. There's a chapter towards the end, I believe it's chapter 6, that is all about self-care and coping skills. So if someone is becoming overwhelmed in the first couple of chapters, when they're really digging deep into their gender identity, I think it's perfectly fine to flip back to the back of the book and do some coping skills exercises interchangeably with the gender exploration exercises.
Right, because you talk about how it's not necessarily a linear process, this book, that you can jump around, and that I found that it was important to do that when I did my writing also, because I feel, as you said too, some people, some of the exercises they won't need, or they're not ready yet, not ready for them yet, or that it's something that they actually know. So you clearly give that type of permission to do that. So so explain a little bit about your own writing process, because I know you were approached and you've been did your poetry and your storytelling, but when you're writing this, explain how you did your process.
So yeah, with this book, I had deadlines. Certain chapters were due certain weeks, and I will be honest, I'm a bit of a procrastinator, and I was also running my practice while I was writing this book. So, Monday through Thursday, I'd be seeing clients, and I had absolutely no energy to write. So I would generally just write on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and in I'd get spurts of energy and write, sit down and write for hours. But so there was a little bit of procrastination and a little bit of, and this book is very creative too, to come up with the prompts and the exercises. So I had to write when I had the creative juices flowing. So more kind of just when the feeling came to me.
Right. I think that when you were speaking of self-care, I think that during this process as an author, it's important to do self-care. And I would find, and it seems like it's similar to you, is that you get those spurts of energy. But I found that writing isn't literally just sitting down and writing. It's, talking to me, doing interviews and getting more information, and you listening and speaking with your clients, that is part of writing, because it gives you more information. I mean, you're not telling their stories. Of course, that's confidential, but I'm saying you're in an environment that really helps give you the energy. Even though you might be tired at the end of the day, you are still replenishing a lot of your knowledge bank. And I found that for me, sitting by the beach and just listening to my ideas. I mean, today I was took a shower, and I was thinking about more things I want to talk to you about. And sometimes when we're doing other things, we are in the brainstorming part of writing. That it is, now for some people, it's just sitting down, they have that kind of structure, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we're both authors. I thought it would be, a nice conversation to have this aspect about the process, because so many, I'm meeting somebody tomorrow that wants me to help them with the process of, them going towards writing a book. And we always, have some conversations about that other aspect when I talk to other people about taking that time, and that there's many ways to do writing. It may be meditating and listening to what comes. So, and procrastinating, it could be part of it. I find it sometimes like a little fear, or I don't know, maybe that's not your case at all. But for me,
I don't think it's necessarily fear. I think that I procrastinate because I would say maybe 40% of the process is the actual writing and 60% is the thinking. So to come up with these prompts and exercises, it was a lot more thinking. So I would think at night, I would jot things down in my phone. I would, when I had an idea, and then at the weekend, I would sit down and take all my thoughts that I had throughout the week, and then put them down on paper, basically.
Right. I didn't mean fear, like fear of fears in the way of like, I'm scared to do it. It was more that I was worried that it wasn't going to come. Like the words, I was worried like the ideas wouldn't come to me. And it's exactly right. Is the thinking. It's hearing something somewhere that triggers a thought that you have to write it down. Or I always would come up with acronyms for myself to help myself remember that thought that I had just had, so, but it could feel like procrastinating. And then that's what it was, like worried that you wouldn't make the deadline. But I think that when having deadlines are very helpful in the writing process, and it somehow, have a little flexibility with it, but when it's due, it's due, So, so I know that you were approached by a publisher, and so they had when we talked earlier, they had a lot of input into this, but when you were writing the book, much goes into the layout and deciding what to put into the book. So how did you approach doing these things? I have, some curiosity on how that happened for you.
Yeah, so I had somewhat of an outline to follow as I was writing the book, and the publisher mostly did the outline. I mean, the layout. There were certain spots where there's a couple of quizzes in the book where I wanted to put the quizzes in the front of the chapters or instead of behind the chapters and things like that. And but the publisher had most of the say in the layout. But it follows a pretty simple introduction, each chapter, resources in the back, and I would say most of the layout was the publisher.
Right. Well, because I noticed it has a very organized way that the reader knows pretty much what portion to expect. But I do think that your choice to do the quizzes at the beginning was a really great idea. I found that it really got me into wanting to read it because I was participating with it. And go ahead, Lil the Finger.
As you mentioned, resources, Katie. There's someone in the chat who's listening now, Billy, who wanted to know what are some good resources for individuals who have been diagnosed with dysphoria but are too scared to make the first step due to the lack of resources and knowledge in the health field, because it does take strength to step up and rediscover your identity.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that I'm coming from a more like US centric resources. So here, there are PFLAG meetings and, different support groups around town. But as far as a more anonymous resources is I have a lot of clients that find support on Reddit threads and Discord, where you can be completely anonymous before you're ready to step up and step out into the public. So there's Ask a Transgender, there's on Reddit. There's, various Discord servers, and obviously finding a therapist that you can be, confidential with and, start your journey. There's various blogs online that you can read and how-tos. So I would say if you're really, really in the beginning stages and you're not ready to come out, or you're just seeking information, I would say reading things like my book, or like I said, the Reddit threads.
And for parents, partners, and educators, there are these books also.
Yes, there's Dee's books that I always recommend to my parents. I recommend Dee's book. In fact, I put it in my resources in this book.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Katie, I was on the plane reading your book, and on my way to Spain, and I had literally no idea that you put in your resource part to my book. I was like blown away, and I thank you so much. I had no idea. And it was one of those moments in time that I actually like cried a little because I was so excited and so proud to be in your book. And I know when you had asked me to look it over, I had no idea about that. And I asked you, never knowing that you had done that, because I just want you to know, on your own, I just think it's a really wonderful book. And it was like a surprise at the end. So thanks, Lil, for always doing like that. You always do it at the time that I least expected, and it's so sweet of you. And thank you, Katie, for recommending the books to you.
Of course.
Clients. It really means so much to me. So I'm going to move on with some other things I'd like to ask you. So, all right, I know that you said it took a lot of thinking for the exercises and creatively putting them together. How did you decide? There's like in my books, I wrote all of my own quotes. Quotes, the different affirmations and the different things I said, I wrote them myself, but I noticed that you have quotes from many people. How did you decide on the quotes to put them in the book?
Oh my goodness. So for the quotes, I did a lot of Googling, and I read article after article after article from like Variety Magazine and GQ and just all sorts of articles online, and found people who were queer, like matriarchs of the world, and I took each chapter and found a quote that I felt was appropriate, but mostly it was a lot of it was very important to me that all the quotes in the book were from people who were trans or part of the LGBTQ community.
Yeah, I mean, I really read every one of them more than once, and because I know I had debated that, and then I had so much feedback from parents and partners and educators that when I was doing my quotes in the books, I wanted to lift the voices of others in that way, and come up with the emotional or creative way of expressing it, almost like a poetic way, from liking to do that type of thing when I was younger also. And I think it's really important that it's known that you were very intentional with the quotes that you put in, as I was too, to make sure that whenever I said something, it was based on other people making a statement, saying something. And it's a very powerful part of your book for me. And I really enjoyed, I actually have a copy of, your book right here. And I have all these things because I really wanted to refer back to them often when I do my work. And so talk a little bit about the exercises.
Yeah. So the exercises were meant to, so prompts were meant to make you think. The exercises were meant to make you practice. So actually, do you mind if I read an exercise?
Oh, it's my next question, so go right ahead.
Yeah. Let me pull up I'm going to give you an example of what an exercise would be. So this is
Katie, this is very exciting. I'm so excited that you do this. I love it. I love that you're doing this now. Go ahead.
So this is an excavation of gender identity. So imagine an archaeologist has started an archaeological dig of your gender identity over your lifetime. They're digging through your life layer by layer, each layer of the dig representing a year or a few years of your life. What would each layer represent in terms of your gender identity? Write down or draw what the team would find out about your gender identity from each layer of the dig. So the exercises really have an time for you to really write and explore and really dig, for lack of a better word, in the book.
Right. They really go deep into their thought process. And one of the things that I thought was most outstanding in that exercise is that you included drawing, not just words, because many people express themselves through that medium. And I know as a teacher, because I always say that I'm first and foremost, I would sometimes when people, students or other people, when I do workshops, finding the words aren't always easy. And that being able to express themselves in another way, I even offer people to do collaging. Sometimes they need to use other types of media to put the picture together for themselves. And then sometimes that's a springboard for being able to find the words. Because sometimes, gender is a feeling, very, and so sometimes words don't come easily. And especially since we both write books that involve the practice, as you put it, the reading or the expression, I have the same view. This is why I say I feel we're aligned, is that there is the thinking and then there is the practice. And then there is also the stillness and all of that also. And putting the creative arts in some way in this, I think, is very important. So I'm glad that you chose that. I didn't know which example you can use, but the drawing is a very important component. And sometimes people just do captions, they do like graphic kind of novel, expression and doing that way. And I think it's very helpful. And then do you find that people, maybe in your practice or in other ways, now that you've done, several, you speak often, is that they want to share what they did with you? How does that process work for you, either professionally or in, with your clients, and or now when you present your book places?
Yeah, so I do find that my clients want to share with me some things that they've written in the journal. Sometimes they'll share the pictures that they drew. There's another prompt in the book where I ask people to draw their avatar when they're playing video games. What does it look like? So a lot of times my clients will want to share what they've written. Or, I recently had somebody that was like, I still don't know where I am. I've done 2 chapters of your book and I'm still not there yet. And so we'll take what they have written in the book, some prompts and exercises, and further process those even deeper in therapy.
Right. I one of the exercises I do when I present is sometimes when I'm working with people is, let's say I speak with parents or, partners, how did their partner visually express themselves before, draw a picture of that, or write about that? How are they expressing themselves now? Do you see them evolving, changing to, and talking about how comfortable they are with the fluidity, because that is very often, we're all people are exploring themselves in different ways, and particularly when it comes to gender. And that's why I think it's powerful for all people to look at this book and understand themselves better.
I agree, certainly, especially even partners of people who are transitioning can read this book and kind of get a sense of where their partner is at. There's another prompt in the book where I ask people to go to their closet and look at all the clothes that are hanging in your closet and kind of feel this kind of visceral feeling you have when you look at the clothes that are in your closet. Is a sort of positive and as a negative. And if people can understand where their partners are coming from, why does my partner not want to wear their clothes anymore? Why does my partner, feel uncomfortable in this outfit? Well, it's because, when they go to their closet, they just it doesn't feel good to them anymore.
Right. It doesn't align with their
It doesn't align with their gender. Yeah.
And it's so great that you brought up the partners, because I recently did some interviews, and one of the things we talked about is how gender expression may change for a partner once while they're experiencing their spouse or their partner exploring their gender or affirming their gender. And one of the things that some partners were talking about is how they felt that they became themselves, their gender expression was in relation to their spouse. Some people say no, that, I'm sure of my gender expression or my gender has stayed consistent, but other people felt that it gave them the opportunity to explore their own journey in this, and to, maybe if their spouse was presenting more masculine, they felt more feminine was more comfortable for them, but then they also, or some people felt, well, I want to explore more of my masculinity, and vice versa. And so I think it's very important that you mentioned that. I think partners and spouses would benefit from this, especially certain portions would stand out more to me than others. So it's a good point.
Yes, yes. And for your point, I have had clients before who have said that them transitioning has given their spouse the courage to explore their own gender identity. Like, it was something that they never thought that their spouse would be okay with, but now that their spouse is transitioning, they're like, oh, well, I guess, I can explore myself too. And it's like two people on different paths, and their paths combine, and they each give each other permission to do what they wanted to do in the first place.
Right. I mean, growing up in a different generation, this wasn't something we really talked about, and I think that now it gives people permission to just be and look at things, try things on. And I don't just mean, visually with clothes, try a different identity, things that may be more aligned with somebody. Lil? You want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to interject on that point, is sort of what I was referring to before, right? I'm not a partner or a family member. I'm a friend and an ally and a professional that has been working in the field for over a decade. And inevitably, after developing close relationships with many of the people that I come in contact with, well, yeah, it's normal for professionals to stop it for a second and also want to think about it sometimes. So it's nice to have these kinds of books like yours and Dee's, and also Katie's, where there's sort of a guidance there that can help us to do that in a pragmatic way.
Right. I think that people really should understand that the trans community are often our greatest teachers, and that they lead the way for cisgender people in many, many ways. And that if people would just really take the time to listen, they would know that we would all be better off for it.
Certainly.
And that's been my experience all the time. And
yeah, absolutely. And we can never, say we understand their viewpoint or, speak for them. Quite the opposite. We need to make sure that their voices are present in the forefront at all times, whenever possible. But that doesn't mean forgetting that everyone else too has the opportunity to explore their own gender identity. You don't have to be trans.
Right, which is why, I mean, everything I do is to empower the voices and the needs of people who are identify as transgender or non-binary, or are questioning their gender, because I that's all I can offer as an educator and as a cisgender person, is to bring people on that have that experience, and then to support the companions, as we say, the parents, the partners, and educators that work with sometimes students or other people, or organizations like Facialteam that, you know, really become empowered by listening to people in the trans community. So
Yeah, even if we've been doing this for a long time, and there's always space for growth and learning, and
Yes.
it's important to keep doing that.
yeah, what did you want to say, Katie? I think it was something you wanted to add in.
I just I was just thinking about when I do things like write surgery letters and things for clients, is that I don't really write that much of them. It's their voices. It's their words, you know, because it's not my job as someone who's cis to write. I mean, obviously as a mental health professional, write the letters, but it's their voices, their stories. That's who you need to listen to.
Right, exactly. People always talk about writing, having the requirement in many places to write the letters. It's the gatekeeping part.
Yeah.
It's so distressful, you know, distressing, you know. I wanted to go a little bit back to your book now.
Yes, of course.
No, I'm not, because it all ties in.
Mhm.
You know, we're talking about, you know, the writing of the book. When you were doing different drafts, how did it work? Did you do many drafts? How did that process go for you?
So I did a first draft, and it wasn't long enough. The questions weren't detailed enough. I had a word count, and I followed the word count precisely, and it turns out that the exercises needed to be like doubly have double the amount of words. So I did a first draft, and then I went through and basically increased the book by almost twice the word count. And then after that, it was edited, and there was a sensitivity reader, I think, which is a good thing, because I am a cisgender author. So I'm very glad that there was a sensitivity reader.
Can you explain what a sensitivity reader is? Because I think that's very important. I had that too.
Yes. So my publisher had someone in the trans community read my book to make sure that it wasn't insensitive, basically, just to have the eyes of someone who is trans have their eyes on my book before it was published.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's so funny because I had the opposite experience. I had it'd be no surprise to anybody who knows me. My questions were a little long, or some things I had were a little long, and they had to say, okay, we're going to shorten this, or the word count, this is the maximum now, we've gone over. And, you know, my book is pretty thick, and all of them are. The education one, I was able to get that in a different place after having done the other two. And so it's so funny how we're all so different, and our personalities reflect in our writing.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so I think it's cute. And with me, I made sure that I had people who were not in the community read, to make sure that it was clear, because they might not have known things. And then I definitely had, you know, therapists read it, and people in the community, for sure, to make sure that the languaging and that nothing would be offensive or hurt anybody in any way, as best as I could do. And so I think that it's great that your publisher actually, you know, provided that service for you. I think that's great. So how has your, you know, personal, professional life changed now that you've done your book, or shifted at all?
Well, I think, you know, I teach continuing education classes to other therapists and professionals. So I've had more interest in my continuing education classes. That's been nice. I have a pre-recorded CEUs that people have been watching more frequently. And I got to do a great book conversation with a locally independent owned bookstore in town, Karis Books. That was really nice. Sat down for about an hour and talked about the book and trans rights. And it's been really nice.
Yeah, I got to attend that live. I got to attend that one. I was very happy to view it. And I think it is a great interview. He did a great job. And then your podcast, don't you have?
Yeah, I've been on a few podcasts. Queer Education is one. I was on a podcast with Erin Everett, who's a nurse practitioner, called Exclusively Inclusive. And that one we talked more about religious trauma in the LGBTQ community. And I've been on a couple of podcasts for marketing telehealth, mental health practice on a business side of things, but I have been on several podcasts, yeah.
So what does your family think of all of this?
I think family's happy. It's funny, my mom, who is open and you know, open-minded. I thought it was great that my mom has started to read my book, and my stepdad started to read my book. And actually my stepdad started to watch I Am Jazz after he read my book. And now he's like totally into it and an advocate for jazz. And it's just, I think it's great that it's taken people of a different generation who were generally more conservative and allowed them to have more open eyes.
I'd just like to comment on that in case anybody watching isn't aware, Jazz Jennings is a trans woman who very publicly came out on television as a child, and her whole transition has been followed in the light of the media. And she lives in Florida, which is stereotypically one of the lesser inclusive states in the US. So yeah, definitely somebody to follow if you have social media. And she wrote a children's book years ago, and her brothers also are extraordinarily supportive and do a lot of posting through their social media in support of the trans community as family members. So they're a fantastic role model family. I just wanted to mentioning terminology. And I think books like both of yours are so important for, you know, in the case of Dee, parents, partners, professionals, and in the case of Katie for people themselves that are exploring their gender identity, and other people in the LGBT community, because it's not necessarily a world that they're aware of from the outset. So it's just good on all fronts. People can learn through your books to be able to, you know what does using the right pronouns mean, and why it's important, and other terminology and concepts that are sometimes difficult to understand. So these books are sort of giving us an introduction into the concepts, which are sometimes difficult.
Thank you. You know, I had a relative just text me the other day about using pronouns and asking me the exact wording that my cousin could use when addressing somebody, because they wanted to have this conversation. And I thought it was so beautiful. And then I belonged to this other organization, and that they were writing the rules, and they wanted to know what's the proper way to word this too. And I find that people are asking a lot more. And as an educator, I mean, I work with teachers all the time, and I love to work with educating schools and doing that. And, you know, I think that with Facialteam, you know, having mental health medical professionals really understand that too. I know this is about you, Katie, but I have to do something with Lil for a second. Lil, what is that beautiful award behind you? I would be remiss not to.
Now it's your turn to surprise me, no?
Uh,
Yes, I thought you were going to talk about the workshop, the educational workshop that you did with Facialteam staff a couple weeks ago when you were here, which was really great. And that went through all kinds of terminology and helps new staff get up to speed in order to be as sensitive as possible to our patients. So yeah, this thing you mean?
yes.
So the week after the workshop, the training workshop, I got this. I don't know if you can see it, but yes, I got my little 10-year trophy working for Facialteam. So I was very proud.
So beautiful. And you know, I think, Katie, that's what, like, being acknowledged for the work that you're doing. I think that having your mom do this, you know, read this, and your stepdad, and that you're teaching all the time. And you know, one of the things that's why I brought up Lil's at that moment, because that's, you know, she may not have written a book, but you know, the work that she's doing also, and that all of us together, we're all doing what we can. But I think it's important, Lil, that we talk about you here. And yes, the facial.
Thank you. Well, a book in the works, eh? It's on the back burner.
Yes. The presenting for Facialteam was one of the greatest experiences of my life. And you know, we're trying to figure out to do it further, but we'll figure that all out. But it was just a beautiful experience, and having people really asking important questions and really wanting to to do better, and they're already doing a fabulous job. So Katie, when you're not doing your writing and working with your patients, and I mean clients, not your patients, I should say. Team refers to the people they work with as, you know, patients, because they're doing surgery with them. But your clients, what do you do for fun? Additional fun.
Yeah, so I'm at one or two places. I am either at a Atlanta Braves game with my family. We like to go to baseball games a lot. We just went to one this past Friday, actually, Braves versus the Padres. And if I'm not at a Braves game, I'm at a concert. I love music, and I'm constantly buying concert tickets. I have to tamper myself. I just love live music.
Right. And you know, that replenishes your creativity and allows you to, you know, I think when you were writing things, music is often something that could be inspiring in the background. Even I think when a person is doing your book, is to put music on, or to listen, you know, to attend things, or watch a baseball game, or to watch a TV show that you were describing before, Lil, that sometimes just sitting with one of, you know, a book when you're doing processing, it may be too much just to use the book. You might need some breaks and or attend things, and also to have them in the background. And so I think that it's important that you brought that up. It's one of the reasons why I brought up the question, is to you know, throw that idea out, that it doesn't have to be like extremely focused, because sometimes it's just the emotions are just so overwhelming when you're doing a self-help type of book like this.
Yes, certainly. I encourage my clients to make their own playlists, you know, like a self-care playlist, something that peps their energy up or takes them out of sadness.
Can I make a suggestion? Katie, Facialteam has its own playlist on Spotify featuring mostly trans non-binary musicians. So check it
very
out.
cool.
It's like, I don't know, 11 hours. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I combed through Spotify and found all of the music.
And you know, empowering trans artists and trans and non-binary artists is really important. And they talk about, you know, having voices that really educate and teach us all. And I just think it's very important for people to remember that there's all different ways to express and contribute to this space. And I'm glad that you brought that up, Lil. So Katie, where do you envision yourself in 5 years, and what do you believe you will be doing?
Well, that is a good question. I thought about that question when I was preparing for this, and I don't know. I imagine I might be a therapist still, or I might be doing more educational CEUs, or, I do have an MBA. I might be a business coach. I don't know. I hope that I'm traveling more than I am now. I haven't been able to travel much, obviously, because of the pandemic. But I think that I will always have a spot for therapy clients, and I can't imagine not doing that in at least part-time.
Yes, that's my favorite question to ask, because I think it's very important to think about where we're going and work towards those goals too. Just like in the book, when you had an intentional goal, is to also take the time to think what our next steps may be, and that we never remain stagnant, and that we're all growing. But bringing the teachings and the knowledge that you have from your practice and from your book and from your education and from listening to others, most of all, to bring that into the next plans that you might have, or the next steps. And for us, Lil, I think that our next steps is we're going to be doing another episode in June. I will probably be doing it from a different location in Mexico. And I have a really wonderful group that I'm going to be interviewing, at least one person or maybe more from gender inclusive biology. And it's a group of educators who are part of the community. And they have put together amazing lesson plans for teachers and educators to incorporate the biology, different lessons to incorporate trans and non-binary people's journey, and to, when people do their health classes and talk about reproduction and stuff, to also incorporate. I mean, that's just one little part. They do so much. I don't want to speak for them, but they're really I got to see them in a workshop, do a workshop at a conference I presented at, and jumped into their workshop, and it was fantastic. So
sounds very interesting. I'm really looking forward to learning from them, because the topic of biology, I understand, is something that's very important to clarify.
Well, I think as when I use work with my education book, and I do it, is to show how educators really need to have representation of the trans and non-binary community in their lesson plans and in everything they do in every subject, whether it's art, whether it's reading literature, whether it's discussions, math lessons. I show how to do that when I do training, and also in sciences and social sciences, and then bringing in the politics of things in lessons, and talking about all that's happening in the world within the US and other countries about this. So I'm very excited to have them. I wanted to ask you though, Katie, is there anything that I either didn't ask you that you would want me to, or something that you want to extend and talk about a little bit more before we get off?
I don't think so. I just want to mention that, again, I do teach continuing education credit hours. So I have a LGBTQ clinicians learning platform online that I have those. And then there was another thing, there was a question that I think we didn't get time for, as to what would I say to someone else wanting to write a book? And I do want to, again, state that it's most important to listen to trans voices. So, if you want to write a book about the trans community, the most important thing to do is to listen to trans voices before you even begin.
Right, and maybe even co-author with somebody.
Yes.
that's what I'm doing with my next project is, I think it's very important that we really do understand the value of really raising the community in a way that people really understand that we're all together on this, So, Lil.
Yes, I'd like to interject on that point as well. I've sort of said it already, but to reiterate, the value of books like Katie's and DM Maynard's, because albeit here we are, three cis women talking about this, it's important also for allies to get on board and up to speed, and these books help us do that. As a professional in the field, it's very, very important to me and to all of the people at Facialteam. And part of the training that we did with DM Maynard was to be able to do that. And I also, just on a more personal note, wanted to mention that as a parent myself, and being involved with the parent-teacher associations and federations now here in Spain, it's part of my daily, I'm the go-to person in my community. People are like, oh, you want to know more about, what it's like a student in a school transitioning here, and talk to Lilia, and I'm explaining things all the time. And so I'm very grateful to have resources such as both of your books, and to be able to direct people to, so they can explore themselves.
Yeah. So, Lil, do you want to do your beautiful lead out or add something?
No. Sure, of course. So if we're good to go today, yeah, we've been going for a while now.
Yeah.
It's been over an hour, so we were worried about not keeping the conversation going, but I don't think that was a problem at all. Thank you so much to both of you, Dee for organizing these and making them happen, Katie for spending time with us today, and sharing your expertise.
So Katie's book one more time. Katie, hold up. Well, I'll hold up my version.
Because Katie's got her blur on, so we can't see it.
So mine's a little clearer. Yes, I have no blur. I'm just, life's just a blur sometimes.
So I really enjoyed this conversation today.
Katie, thank you for your time, your professionalism, for all you contribute to making people's lives better, and enjoy your baseball games and your music and your concerts. And I hear what you might do in the next 5 years, but if you can always incorporate working with clients, I think that the world would be a better place for you for doing that. And I think
thank you.
And I'm very, the more time will go on, I'll get to know you better, and I'm happy to know you. And I thank you for your time and your willingness to join us here today.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Could you both just, some people were asking if you could, before we go, tell people where they can obtain your books, and also where they can follow you if you're on any social media, even though some of the links are in the description of this video.
Okay, go ahead.
Katie, you want to go?
Sure. My book can be found on Amazon, at Target, locally at Karis Books and More if you're looking for an independent bookseller. And you can find me mostly by my name, Katie Leikam. It's my website, my Instagram handle, and my Facebook.
Okay. Well, me with JKP, jkp.com, JKP, that's my publisher, Jessica Kinsley Publishers. Amazon, in lots of bookstores. I've walked into Barnes & Noble and other places and saw them on the shelves, and bookstores all throughout Europe. I went, there was somebody just sent me, it was in Berlin, and of course, so you can get them in different places. I'm on, you can get me on DM Maynard, do it on Twitter, and you can join me there. You can join me on Facebook. And email me at dmmaynardworkbook@gmail.com. dmmaynardworkbook@gmail.com. And I will absolutely write you back.
Fantastic. Thank you, both of you. And I'd also like to thank the people who are watching and commenting today. We really appreciate you watching the 14th episode of our monthly series with Dia Maynard, author, who today brought Katie Leikam, also an author, raising awareness of all themes, trans and trans allies. And also we must not forget to thank Facialteam for offering this platform to raise voices like Dee's and Katie's and other trans activists in our community. So without further ado, I would like to ask everybody to like, follow and share this video, which is now going to be saved onto our channel along with all the other episodes that we have now. I think over 50 different episodes live on various different topics. And remember, as I always say, you're not alone and your health and happiness matter. Thank you and see you soon. Bye-bye.